Good afternoon. My name is Reverend Krista Taves. I'm the Minister of Congregational Life here at Elliott Unitarian Chapel, and I offer a warm welcome to all of you who have come to honor the life of James A. Reed. We're so glad that you are here, and those of you joining us in person and those of you joining us online. Thank you for coming. And we extend a special welcome to Jim's mother, Rosemarie, who is joining us online. We send you our deepest love and care at the loss of your beloved son. We come from many walks of Jim's life, his immediate and extended family, his neighbors and friends, co-workers from Harris Stowe University, and his church family here at Elliott Chapel. We are here to offer comfort and support to all who are mourning Jim's passing. I also wanted to note that although Jim was a humanist and Unitarian Universalist, his birth family is Christian, and this will be reflected in our service this afternoon out of respect for all who loved him and are grieving him. In Unitarian Universalism, we do not focus so much on a life hereafter. It is up to each of us to determine in our own conscience what our beliefs are about what happens after death. It was this freedom of conscience that brought Jim to us, and it is what led to his decision to make this his church home. What we do believe in is a loving universal force that asks us to take care of this world, for it is here that we create our heavens and our hells. So we focus on this life, this one precious life, and ask that we make it a lifelong commitment to leave this world better than we arrived in it. So let us be present in this time as we journey through Jim's precious life, for in every life rests the seeds of truth and wisdom, that deeper calling to love one another and to be good to ourselves. This is how the Spirit that some call God moves in and among us and through all that is. In Unitarian Universalism, we light a chalice, symbol of our faith, to recognize that we have entered sacred space and have prepared our hearts and minds for the blessing of beloved community, which is created whenever we gather. I would invite Chris Hickey, Jim's partner, to light our chalice. Do it together. We light this chalice in honor of James A. Reed, in whose memory we have gathered today. Let us pray. God of grace, Spirit of love, source of all things that changes us as we cannot change ourselves, we thank you for your deep, immeasurable love. We thank you that your love covers us in its fulfillment, leading us homeward. Bless this assembly, and may you be honored as we celebrate a life that glorified you. Bless those who have suffered this great loss, and may they find comfort. In the name of the love that is greater than our understanding, this we pray. Amen. I would invite you to rise in body or spirit for our hymn, hymn 205, Amazing Grace.
Sweet the sun.
Our reading is an excerpt from Restless Farewell, a song by Bob Dylan. We're reading the first 3 verses. Restless Farewell. Oh, all the money that in my whole life I did spend, be it mine right or wrongfully, I let it slip gladly to my friends, to tie up the time most forcefully. But the bottles are done, we've killed each one, and the table's full and overflowed, and the corner sign says it's closing time. So I'll bid farewell and be down the road. Oh, every foe that I ever faced, the cause was there before we came, and every cause that I ever fought, I fought it full, without regret or shame. But the dark does die, as the curtain is drawn, and somebody's eyes must meet the dawn. And if I see the day, I'd only have to stay, so I'll bid farewell in the night and be gone. Oh, every thought that strung a knot in my mind, I might go insane if it couldn't be sprung, but it's not to stand naked under unknowing eyes. It's for myself and my friends, my stories are sung, but the time ain't tall, yet on time you depend, and no word is possessed by no special friend. And though the line is cut, it ain't quite the end. I'll just bid farewell till we meet again. We now have an interlude. I'll fly away. Let us prepare our hearts and spirits to receive the story of Jim's life with 2 scriptural passages that speak to who he was. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 13 to 18. Happy are those who find wisdom and those who get understanding, for her income is better than silver and her revenue better than gold. She is more precious than jewels, and nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand. In her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who lay hold of her. Those who hold her fast are called happy. And the Gospel of John, chapter 8, verses 32. And you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. James A. Reed was the firstborn son of Glenn and Rosemary Reed. His father, Glenn, was born and raised on a farm in Oxford, Benton County, Indiana. As a young man, Glenn went to Chicago with a friend and got work at a prestigious country club. His future wife's father worked at the club and invited him home for a game of checkers, and that is how he met Rosemarie. Rosemary's parents were Austrian and came to America in 1920, sponsored by a wealthy family to work at that prestigious country club. Glenn was 7 years older than Rosemarie, who was 15, but they began to date. They went dancing, did all the things that young people of their day did. Rosemarie came to the country club where Glenn polished silver. In 1940, they were married. There's a story that shortly after marrying, Rosemarie wanted to go dancing like they always did. And Glenn said there was no need to go dancing anymore. They were married. Glenn brought Rosemarie back to Indiana to start their married life, where she was warmly welcomed by his family. It was an adjustment for her, being a city girl. Soon after, Pearl Harbor was attacked, and Glenn enlisted in the Army and served until the end of the war. Rosemarie at first moved east with him and did odd jobs, but returned to Indiana when Glenn went overseas. Glenn returned after the war with 5 campaign ribbons, and like so many veterans, Glenn just wanted to get back to his regular life. And that is the community that Jim entered when he was born in September 1947. There's a story about his birth. 1 month before his due date, Rosemarie went into labor. She asked Glenn to take her to the hospital, but Glenn didn't believe she was in labor. So she threatened to go into the street and hitchhike to the hospital. And Glenn finally relented. Jim was born 1 month early. Starting school at Oxford Elementary was a big moment for Jim because this is when his world opened. He learned to read and write, and for him, this was everything. His father, being a laborer, couldn't relate to this as much, but Rosemarie, she understood and took extra care to ensure that Jim got the education he deserved. She recognized his intellect and encouraged him at every turn. In high school, Jim had a mentor, Ora McGuire, who took Jim under her wing and taught him about libraries, books, reading, and history. The Historical Society and the library were his second and third homes. When Jim was 10, he was still an only child, and he asked his parents if they would give him a brother. And soon, Mike arrived. Jim was thrilled, and even though there was a decade between them, it did not matter. They were extremely close and devoted to each other their entire lives. There have been so many good evenings playing guitar, singing, and sharing the stories of their lives. During school, Jim didn't spend all his time studying. There are a few humorous moments that his family wanted to share today. One day, Jim and his friends decided they were just going to follow the constable all day, walking behind him as he made his rounds. And the constable finally turned around and demanded to know, "Why are you following me?" And Jim spoke up and innocently said, "We just want to follow you, that's all." And they did the rest of the day. Another time, Jim's class went on a field trip that included a swine calling contest. Whoever got the pig to come to them when called won the contest. Jim won with these lines, "Come hither, my swine." When he graduated high school in 1964, there was no doubt he was going to college, and no doubt that he would need a scholarship, which he was rewarded with from Purdue University. He chose Purdue so he could stay living with his family, and he completed his bachelor's in history. But this is also when the Vietnam War began, and men his age were being called into service. Jim was able to defer his service to complete his master's in history at Purdue, but then he was called up to serve. His service from 1974 to 1975 was spent in Germany, where he trained on Chaparral missiles and served as the clerk of the base. There were good times in Germany, even though they were difficult years. He enjoyed the German culture, especially the German beer, and he discovered his love of comic books and music. When he returned home, he continued his education at Brandeis. This is where he met and fell in love with Elizabeth, the woman he would marry. He returned with her to St. Louis. Elizabeth's family had deep roots and belonged to a stratum of society very different from his. This was a new experience for Jim. Elizabeth and Jim did not marry for some time due to an inheritance that Elizabeth gained access to only when she was 31. And when that time came, they had a small, quiet wedding and moved into a beautiful home in Kirkwood, made more beautiful by Elizabeth's careful attention. Jim decided he would like to be a teacher and went to Washington University for his teacher certification and began to work part-time. But then he got his break when he was accepted into the faculty at Harris Stowe University. Jim loved his work because he could devote all his time to researching and teaching history. He loved his students. Remembering all those who mentored him, he took the time to mentor his students and help them access every opportunity they could. Ancient and medieval European history was his passion, and he developed his own personal library with 10,000 books. Jim and Elizabeth loved each other deeply. They were happy together, sharing a love of music, and they spent much time with Elizabeth's family and friends. Coming to St. Louis is how he discovered Unitarian Universalism. He knew from a young age that he was not likely to adopt the religion of his family. Unitarian Universalism was a perfect fit for him, with its deep connection to the mind and intellectual exploration. He enjoyed the services, he led discussion groups, and what really became his passion was the Friday Free Thinkers group, which he attended without fail. But then Elizabeth became ill, struggling with mental health issues, and Jim took care of her, patiently and lovingly. It was so helpful when they found a couples support group, and those couples became their closest friends, and they stayed connected for decades. In 2013, Elizabeth died, and Jim became a widower. It was a difficult journey, no doubt after spending so much of his time caring for her. His life felt empty, but he had his books, his family, his friends, and his congregation. In 2016, Jim met Christine Hickey in a very deep friendship, and then more than a friendship built between them. They were partners and loved each other's company. Christine began coming with Jim to Elliott Chapel and attending Friday Free Thinkers. They were very content and enriched being together. But then came COVID, a trying time for everyone because we were separated from each other and so many things that gave us meaning. And the same was true for Jim and Chris. And then last year, things took a turn for the worse. Both Jim and Chris were diagnosed with cancer. Jim's was terminal, and Chris's was not. Both of them launched on a journey of treatments, Jim's to give him comfort and more time, Chris's to beat the illness, which thankfully she has. Jim began putting things in order. In fact, here at Elliott, the way we found out he was ill was that he mailed a check fulfilling his pledge with a little note. "Here's my entire pledge. I have end-stage cancer and will not likely make another one." Jim did incredible inner work to come to an acceptance of his oncoming death and still focused on living to its full capacity. He even kept a diary to capture the last days of his life. And during those times, many came to support him. Chris Hickey, of course, his mother, Anne Marie, his brother, Mike, niece, Amber and Robin. And secure in the love of his mother, his partner Christine, brother Mike, niece Amber and Robin, Catherine and Jeff, and so many other family members and dear friends, Jim peacefully passed away on January 20th, 2023. He will be remembered for his devotion to truth and wisdom, his devotion to those he cared for, his always curious mind, his love of music, and his love of learning. He will be dearly missed. At this time, we will move into a time for tributes, and Mike, Jim's brother, will begin. After that, please come forward as you're moved to do so.
Thank you. Thank you for everybody for coming. I'm honored to say a few words about my brother. Jim wanted a brother very badly, and as a result of that, I was born. Thank you, Jim. He kiddingly mentioned several times I replaced his dog Tippy. I was born in 1958, Jim in 1947, so I was a little late to be a perfect playmate, but we were raised in the wonderful town of Oxford, Indiana. We had a double swimming pool, we had a lot of fun with a movie theater, and just a great life. Jim had a responsibility, though, of taking care of me. As a young child, Jimmy, who I'm one of the few people that got to call him Jimmy, picked on me a lot. And we had a great fun. And it was a normal thing for me. I did not know any better. It was just normal. Stuff like our walking adventures took place. Two memorable outings I'd like to talk to you about, where we'd walk the small town of Oxford, Indiana, of about 850 people. And he'd go to a house with no paint that was quite worn out, very scary. And he would scare me, and he'd tell me that a dirty old man there gave children poisoned cookies, and I needed to stay away from that house. And boy, I sure did. We all rode our bikes like we owned the town, and I never went down that street. Another outing that Jim and I did was another scary house that was torn down. And this house was just about a block and a half from where we lived, and it was very decrepit. And he would sneak me into the house, and he would say behind my back, "I'm going to eat you, my pretty." And I'd be so scared. And I'd cry, and he would hold my hand and not let me go. But, I always wanted to go back. So, these were graphic and fun. He used to tell me stories. When I was a child, I was 3 years old. He was 13, 14. And his history was very, very strong at that age. And I got the good stories, the kind with people with their heads cut off and stuck on a spear. Those are true stories I found out. Jim was very, very smart, and he didn't delay telling me all these stories. So I came to find out those stories were very true. Jim taught me many things at a young age, and as I got older, Jim taught me how to play poker. I'm pretty good at it. When his buddies did not have a fourth, I was able to fill that table. He had good friends like Wendell Slavens, who I'll mention today in honor. I got to play cards with him. Wendell was a good friend, and he left on leave to play cards, and then when he went back to Nam, he died just a few weeks later. Many of Jim's friends became mine, and at some point in time, it's not written in here, but they became very good drinking friends of mine also. I became quite good at math by playing darts with Jim, as well as a good dart player. I'm in business. I could not keep up with him on the pool table. Jim went to Purdue. He lived 25 miles from campus, so he played a lot of pool, and he picked up loose change that way. Jim was always good at grades, Dean's List at Purdue, and honors, I'm sure, at Brandeis. When he was drafted, his duty was at Giebelstadt, Germany, as was mentioned, where he was the captain's right-hand man as a clerk. He also trained on those Chaparral missiles and took great pride in being in the service. At that time, to protect the German line, Jim was not much of a doper, so after many times of trying to kick around, he became what he considered an alkie. He got through those days and came home. He met Elizabeth in Massachusetts, where Jim was at Brandeis, and soon they were married and inseparable, and they did settle in St. Louis. They had many good, loyal years together with ups and downs, but till the end, he was very fond of his lost wife, who passed away. He did find Christine, and she became a savior for him, and I appreciate that very much. Christine's going to have some stories, I'm sure, of her own. Jim's favorite hobbies in life were his history studies, as you all know, his stamp collection and coin collection, and his love for Marvel and sci-fi. Jim started me up in stamps, but I'm at no way a level where he is. He's serious business. He could tell you a full historical story from one stamp, and his stamp collection is amazing. I'm going to have a great time enjoying it, but it's also a burden to know what to do with some of these things. But Jim left them to me in love. Jim and I shared this love of sci-fi addictions and passed them on to me, but I may have had something to do with some of that, as well as our mother. As intellect as Jim was, I taught him to love Doctor Who. Jim was not too impressed at first, but he became a Whovian, which was more of our favorite thing to do together. I'd come over and we'd watch every single back Doctor Who on TV he had recorded. He left many books and recordings. He left a library of those books and collections, sci-fi, 10,000 books as mentioned. It's just, I had the best brother I could have ever imagined. I'm very blessed for that. He put up with my lack of knowledge. He was a great genius, and our family was very proud of him. He also had a fond heart. He was the Santa Claus at our Christmas, and to the nieces and nephews in my family, they always looked forward to his gifts at Christmas. He often said he mimicked our Uncle Paul Reed, my dad's brother, who was our generation's Santa Claus. Jim had more time with Dad. I had more time with Jim. Dad died when I was about 18. Our father was a man's man, and we are better for it. Times have changed in the world, and times have changed the world. I think Jim's time might have been the best of times, as his world is changing. Did I mention his love for music? He had a very up-to-date Beatles collection. He says that it's complete, at least at the date he quit collecting. Jim loved our mother, who is 100 years old, and allowed her to be very comfortable in her years. Mom, we love you. He loved his church group and his free thinkers and his couples group of the past. He was fond of his peers, and he found his peers. Some of you here tonight, and through these groups, I thank you for being there for Jim. Jim's illness started to show up in May of 2022, and he was gone so quick. We left so many discussions and dreams behind. I'm thankful we did have our trip to Austria. That was a fantastic trip together prior to COVID. Looking back, he was not well then. He was tired a lot, and we just thought it was his aging. He took that trip because it meant so much to me. I don't think he really wanted to go that bad. I must keep this short, but Jim was a great brother, and I could go on and on and on, and I miss him very much. That's not going to fade. We will keep him in our hearts, and who knows, we shall meet again. Rest in peace, Jim. Thank you.
Oh, good. My glasses get fogged up. I want to thank you, let you know that I am truly grateful to all of you for your kindness and support, and for coming here today to honor Jim and celebrate his life. Many of you have known Jim for longer than I have. I've been blessed to know him for over 7 years. It may have been as many as 10. We were trying to figure that out. We met through Elliot Chappell's Friday Free Thinkers discussion group, where we shared ideas about books and current events. And we pondered life together. A group of us often went to lunch after meetings. Sometimes we arranged to go to cultural events and movies. One time, a group of us planned to go to Frontenac Mall to see the movie Brooklyn. It turned out that Jim and I were the only ones who could make it that afternoon. We enjoyed the movie then. Goodness. And then we decided to walk in the mall for a while. Then Jim said, "So is this a date?" And I said, "Do you want it to be?" And he said, "Yes." And that was our first date. Jim commented later, "This is the first date I've had in 41 years." It was the start of a lovely time in both of our lives. We were both introverts and very different in many ways, but we were good for each other. We attended lectures, concerts, art shows, social events, and family gatherings. We took many walks and learned about each other's lives. He grew up in rural Indiana, and I grew up in suburban western Massachusetts, but we had lots in common. We were both only children for many years. Then my young aunt came to live with my family. Jim got a baby brother when he was 11 or 12 years old. Until then, we were both latchkey kids. I spent my time making music, doing artwork, gardening, and climbing trees. Jim spent his time mostly reading. His mom bought him reading textbooks, and he learned to read before kindergarten. His favorite place to read was on a stump hidden in the cornfield behind his house. I guess we shared some love of the outdoors in that way anyway. At school, Jim was always asked to read announcements. He won a library summer reading contest for reading hundreds of books. He earned many academic awards throughout his life. Jim taught his little brother to read, and he read Mike many stories. One day I asked Jim if he felt jealous when his baby brother was born. He said, "No, I had prayed for one." Although Jim teased Mike unmercifully in childhood, their love was always strong. Mike read stories to Jim in his last days. Through the last 7 years, Jim told me wonderful stories about his family, his beloved deceased wife, Bibbit, their family, and their loyal friends. He told me trivia and histories of places we visited. He was flexible and patient. We tried new adventures. He even drove me to Collinsville to see the world's biggest bottle of ketchup. Ketchup's my favorite condiment, as many of my friends know. We lived life in the fast lane. Jim was an honest, conscientious, and dependable gentleman. I loved that he always opened doors for me. I treasured that, and I treasure the time we had together.
For those of you guys that don't know me, I am Jim's niece. I'm Mike's oldest daughter. I was brought here today to say a few words for my grandmother, Rosemary. She wrote a letter being she couldn't be here. So in honor of her, I'm about to read her letter that she would like to say about our good Uncle Jim. Dear Jimmy, I did what you told me to. I got things I never would have had if you hadn't told me to. Among the more expensive items were the Lazy Boy lift chair with remote, new carpeting for my living room, bedroom, and den. I replaced cooking pots, 8 pans, and for once in my life, I got quality clothes before the prices went up, etc. Thanks to you. I could not have all this without your help, so I have to thank you, dear son of mine. Do you remember? I know you must remember. When you were 10 years old, you sat down on the couch asking me for a serious talk. You told me how much you wanted a brother. In fact, you told me to give you a brother. So your dad and I really tried to accomplish this, and lo and behold, you had a new baby boy, Michael. About a year later, I sit in this so comfortable lift recliner and meditate almost all my waking hours. I think mostly of you. I am so proud of you, Jim. I think of things like when you were only 2 years old and we were both at Bob Ladd's drugstore. Bob had those little ice cream tables, and you were of the size that you could walk underneath them without your head touching tables. Bob's store was crowded, and little you would push people aside saying, "Excuse me." Folk thought you were so cute. Then there was a time that you and I were sitting in the crowded Oxford's doctor's office, and I was drawing pictures to keep you quiet. I got weary of drawing and stopped, but you wanted me to keep amusing you. So I told you I didn't know what to draw next. So you told me to draw a witch. I said, I don't know what a witch looked like. And you said in a loud voice, just like that lady over there. And you pointed with one finger at one of our neighbors. Jim, I used to write to you all the time and college and when you were in college, but you were upset one weekend home and you said to me, Mom, you write a lot, but you don't say anything. That's why I stopped writing to you. Forgive me a bit. I needed to write this now. So please keep reading my letters. And I love you so much. Hugs and kisses. Mom. That being said, we miss Uncle Jim very much, and I was very touched with everybody that showed up today, and I'm so thankful that you all came. My years of knowing my uncle, I lived far away in Illinois, but we had many great times together, and I really got to know my Uncle Jim when I was probably about 8. We traveled all the way to the Grand Canyon and back from Apache Junction, and he roughhoused with me the whole way, back seat. And there was never a dull moment, and he always gave us noogies, and he was just always so lovable, and the best Santa Claus at Christmas time. And he always was there when I needed help the most, and even traveled 3 hours away one time when I was in trouble. I was honored to be able to come spend a few weeks with him towards his end of life. I got to bond with him a little bit more, and even as sick as he would still take me out to a restaurant to eat and spend one last dinner with him. And I know he appreciated it very much that I was there, but I think I took more out of it than he knows. And I'm just so grateful that I had that time with him. And he is very loved and very missed. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Robin Reed. I'm Mike's younger daughter and Amber's little sister. So what I want to talk about for Uncle Jim is his gift of love of education that he passed down to me. Something that he told me in school to get me to study math is he told me that math saved his life. Because he said because he knew algebra is why he got to go to Germany instead of Vietnam. So he always told me, study math because it may save your life someday. So that's one of my fondest memories, is that's why I studied math. And now I decided that I was going to get my master's in social work. And I didn't want to ask, but he told me, he's like, I'll help you get that. So he gave me the gift of a scholarship to school. So now that I can go get my master's in social work. And I just want to let him know that I'm going to do the best I can. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rachel Higgy, Christine's daughter. Good afternoon, everybody. How lucky are we to all be friends and family of Jim Reed? I know you're all missing conversations with Jim. He was always ready for a good conversation about history or religion or politics or race or gender norms or Marvel Comics or Doctor Who. And as a free thinker, he enjoyed the act of thinking and rethinking. He cared about being well-read and continuously learning. And it showed in what he read about and who he listened to, which was all of us. He cared about us, and we never doubted it. So I'm grateful to have gotten so many opportunities to take in live music and plays with Jim. I get to keep years of memories of him arriving calm, cool, and collected at my mom's house for every concert and production, usually several hours early, all dressed up in his red sweater or his crisp checked shirt, button-down shirt, and he'd greet each of us warmly and settle in while my mom got ready, and she'd spend at least an hour offering him what she knew were his favorite snacks and drinks. And he'd graciously accept, and he'd tell her sincerely how nice she looked. And he rarely rushed us to be as prepared to get on the road as he had been the minute he walked at the door. So I will remain grateful that he spent almost his last decade showing my mom and my son and me that kind of just generous sweetness and patience. Almost half my son's life, Jim has spent being the most warm and present grandpa he's ever known. So I loved Jim's influence on all of us. Thank you, Mom, for picking a really good guy.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? All right. So we have our next interlude. Mike specifically asked for this one. Maybe you did too. Chris, King of the Road. by Roger Miller. We did the best we could. Sorry about that. Okay. Thanks for trying, Ken. We're sorry that we couldn't make that happen. I would invite you to join with me in the spirit of prayer and meditation as you're willing and able. Gracious God, Spirit of life, we give thanks for the life of James Reed. We give thanks for his unique way of being, for his ceaseless curiosity and engagement with the world around him. We give thanks, for he made this world a better place. May we who mourn his death be granted the gifts of understanding. For those things left unfinished and unsaid, may we find acceptance and forgiveness. May we truly come to a place of thanksgiving for his life. The truth of his life endures, for it is woven into the fabric of the larger life, of which we and he are all a part. Let us enter into a minute of silence for the prayers and meditations of our own hearts. As we bid Jim farewell, let us be confident and trusting that a human life is full of meaning and purpose, even in death. For human life is a sacred thing. Its beginning is sacred, its span of years is sacred, and its ending is sacred too. Let Jim's name be inscribed on the tree of life forever. Amen, and blessed be. I invite you to rise for our closing song, another favorite requested by his family, Leaving on a Jet Plane by John Denver. The lyrics on the back of your order of service.
Thank you.
As we extinguish this chalice, may the light that once was James A. Reed living and breathing among us now rest in our hearts. For all who see God, may God go with you. For all who embrace life, may life return your affection. For all who seek a right path, may a way be found and the courage to take it step by step. Please remain seated for one more musical gift. Excuse me. Thank you so much for being here today. Go in peace.